Kathleen Wynne was briefed on these numbers over a year ago when she became leader of the Liberal Party. So it's a good test in her leadership style and, quite frankly, character. If she found out they're false numbers, I'd expect her to become public about that and put the real numbers on the table. The fact that she's continued this charade shows to me that she's more of the same of Dalton McGuinty.
Well, they wouldn't be the first government in history to be accused of cooking the books. That, of course, is the Ontario Liberals whom I'm talking about. Hello, everyone. I'm Adrienne Batra. Thanks very much for staying with us here at Sun News. And just a reminder to all of our viewers, at 2 p.m. today, we will be carrying the press conference live of NBA Commissioner Adam Silver and the fallout about the alleged racist comments made by Clippers owner Donald Sterling. Well, let's begin with the big story that we're talking about here, back in our backyard, and that is the Ontario PCs accusing the Liberals of cooking the books. Let's bring in our Sun News contributor and Toronto Sun columnist and editor Laurie Goldstein and CTF Ontario Director Candice Malcolm. Welcome to both of you. Let me start with you, Candice. Last week, the CTF launched a deficit campaign right in the backyard of Ontario's Finance Minister Charles Sousa. Today, you move ahead with unveiling some posters or billboards in his riding. In fact, we have a few of those pictures that we can put them up there. So when the PCs get their hands on cabinet documents saying that they've ostensibly cooked the books as far as the deficit goes, are you surprised?
Not really surprised, Adrienne. I mean, good for the PCs to finally dig this information and be able to confirm it, because it really is what we've suspected for a very long time. If you remember in the budget last year, there was a lot of confusion about how they were actually going to get to a balanced budget by 2018, as they kept claiming. The numbers just didn't quite add up, and we didn't have any confirmation. So now it's confirmed. It's in line with what Don Drummond, the economist, said in 2012, that if nothing was done, the budget or the deficit was going to inflate to $30 billion by 2018. So it's more in line with those original ideas.
Oh, remember that Drummond report, Laurie? I think it's, collecting dust somewhere in magical happy land. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what we're talking about here is going back to about 2009. And at the time, the deficit was, according to these documents, the Liberals knew that it was going to be nearly $25 billion, in line with what Don Drummond was saying. But hardly the first time a government would, sort of gerrymander the books in order to make it look one way, and then all of a sudden say, hey, it's not actually as bad as we think.
Yeah, well, I mean, Dwight Duncan, the previous finance minister, used to do that all the time. Like, he would come in and dire predictions. Oh my God, well, the world's end. And then, whoa, behold, look at the great job we've done. And we say, the best place to hide a $10 billion deficit is in a $20 billion forest. But like a year ago, I mean, what they were saying made no sense. A year ago, they were saying, okay, we're going to miss our revenues by $5 billion, but we'll still be okay on balancing the budget in 2017, 2018. It doesn't work. That just doesn't work. Look, judge them by their record. We're at $272 billion of debt. They've doubled the debt in the 11 years they were in there. Yeah. The deficit, which we know, one thing we do know about this year's deficit in the Thursday budget, it's going to go up.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. Let's unpack that quickly, because we know that the Ontario's Auditor General, Bonnie Lysyk, came out with a report just in the past couple of days saying that much of the revenue that government always likes to use to balance the books is gambling revenue. They're going to be down. They're way off on their projections with respect to that, so not going to be able to rely on that, Candice. We also know, thanks to the budget leaking team, the BLT, that they are intending on increasing spending by over $5.6 billion. So we know that they're not going to turn off the spending taps. So we are going to see the deficit, not the debt, but the deficit continue to climb and climb and climb. So how does this play out then for the, we'll talk about the election coming up, but how does this play out for the average Ontarian? When they hear these numbers, as you and I both know, they don't latch onto it. They can look at their hydro bill, they can look at their gas bill, they can look at their individual cost of goods going up. But how does this matter to the average taxpayer?
Well, Adrienne, as we know, it's all smoke and mirrors with this government. So it's better for everyday people to just ignore the government. I mean, you can't really trust what they're saying anyway. And I want to point out how bad it must be for bureaucrats in the Department of Finance to actually be leaking internal documents to the PCs.
Oh yeah.
They must be like legitimately worried about the state of their government and their finances and the ability of Charles Sousa, the finance minister, to balance the budget. I think they're afraid. They're trying to ring the alarm bell, and that's what CTF is too. I think think to folks at home and taxpayers in Ontario, really what it all boils down to is $20,000 for every man, woman, and child in debt, and this government refusing to acknowledge that that's even a problem and continuing to head full steam towards that fiscal cliff.
Laurie, when Candace brings up a good point, when the bureaucrats smell blood in the political water, it's incredible how much information will come, spewing out of Queen's Park in such short order. So I'm not necessarily surprised that we're seeing some of this information. I mean, it's been pretty spot on. We know exactly what the Liberal cabinet ministers are going to be doing on any given day because of the leaked documents. But I want to talk specifically about the gas plant cancellation, because we know directly that is having an impact on the average taxpayer in Ontario, the average ratepayer. The cabinet ministers on the Liberal side flippantly say, well, Shirelli says it's just a cup of Tim Hortons coffee, it's not going to really matter too much. But that's hardly the case. We're seeing the rates go up pretty much more than a cup of Tim Hortons coffee.
It's going up. To me, that should be, I don't know if that should be the issue in this election. Energy prices. That's led to the loss of 300,000 manufacturing jobs in this. I mean, how do these policies affect people? That's how they affect people. And look, hydro rates had to go up. Our grid, the infrastructure, had been neglected by governments of all political stripes for years. We're seeing it in city governments with the infrastructure collapsing, and but the ridiculous policies these people did on wind and solar, which are now really coming on and are adding billions and billions of dollars for unreliable energy we don't need. We could have ended coal without, actually we did. We used nuclear and natural gas. I look at them and the only story I have is that a couple years ago I went to a technical briefing about their plans for cap and trade and all these things, carbon taxes, blah, blah, blah. And they're talking and I'm listening to them and I'm going, my God, they're going to make all the mistakes the Europeans did. So I said to them, who have you been consulting with on this? Said, we talked to the people for the European Emissions Trading Scheme.
Yeah, and
that at that point was blowing up.
Yeah. Well, speaking of blowing up, politics is blowing up in Ontario. And are we heading into an election? It's looking more and more like we are. And as Laurie and Candace have both mentioned, we will be having a budget in Ontario on Thursday. The Sun News Network will have a live coverage of the budget. Battleground Ontario continues.